What is going on, guys? Welcome into the Pro Football Focus Fantasy Slant. I am your host, Mike Tagliere. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Tagliere NFL. I also have my co-host here, Kevin Cole. He's with me. You could follow him on Twitter at Cole_Kev. Kevin, you want to say hi?
Hi, how you doing, guys?
Hey, we are back. Obviously, last week it was our first week with you guys. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the show with us. Today, we get to go a little bit more freelance. We're not going to be covering every single NFL team, but the first thing we are going to get into, the NFL season is 1 week away, and it just so happens that right before we started recording this podcast, that Tom Brady's suspension has been lifted by the courts. Now, apparently there's still some appeal process, but as of right now, it appears that Tom Brady is ready to go for week 1 against the Steelers. That's a week from tonight. Now, the breakdown on this, I am curious to see what Kevin thinks about it. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo is the loser here. He's the one that was, supposed to step forward for those 4 games. I think this allows Gronk to get back for those first 4 games. It's not that he wasn't a first rounder to begin with, but this just reinforces that Tom Brady's back. It's going to help Edelman if LaFell can get back on the field. Kevin, what's your take on this whole thing?
Yeah, I think it's a positive, obviously, for the rest of the Patriots players. It's probably also a positive in the running game if we're talking about maybe Jonas Gray week 1 or even LeGarrette Blount. I mean, I think you want to taking a lead is probably the most important for those guys. Once they have the lead, they can kind of pound out the running game. So against someone like Pittsburgh, I know a lot of people are going to be concentrating on the passing game, but it's really winning leads to running the ball as opposed to you can't necessarily hide and run the ball the entire game if you're losing. So this will help make them more of a favorite, allow them to do that. As far as where you should draft Brady, which I think is probably an important point now, he was going in that kind of, let's say 8 to 12 range leading into this. I wouldn't necessarily go crazy and draft him a lot earlier. I mean, last year he was basically around QB 10 as far as his finish. A lot of people have pointed to the fact that, started maybe a little bit slowly, and then once Gronk got healthy, he turned it on. There is an element of that, but if you split the season in half, his performance in the first and the second half, it wasn't really that big of a difference. So, and a lot of quarterbacks are going pretty late this year. You look at Drew Brees is going pretty late. Peyton Manning is going pretty late. A lot of guys are going late. So I wouldn't necessarily move Brady dramatically up the board because I don't think he's a top 3 option like he had been some years in the past. And some people may be looking at that. Plus, you mentioned the wide receivers. We don't really know what's going on there with the wide receivers right now. Edelman, who knows when he's going to be back, but he looks a little bit more positive. LaFell, the talk is PUP, and the actions speak towards that with the signing of Reggie Wayne. So I think it's a positive overall, but as far as actionable, what you should do, just continue to invest in the players where they are. I think just be a little bit more certain of that right now.
I agree. It comes down more to feeling comfortable with doing that. Now, me, I've never been an early tight end guy, but the fact that Brady was going to be out those first 4 games, it was kind of straying me away from Gronk. I was okay with him in the second round, but this just helps me feel a little bit more at ease with it. Now, in regards to Brady as a QB1, I'm going to kind of lump him in with that Matt Ryan Tannehill territory. I'm with you that the splits were not exactly what people thought they were. Now, yes, he started out awful, and I remember people questioning whether or not Tom Brady was done, whether or not that they should have. He was on waiver wires in some leagues. People just dropped him. And in the middle of the season, he took off. There's no question about that. But then towards the end of the season, he also had 2 games where he went back downhill. Now, I think you're going to get a little bit of that with the Patriots just because they're the Patriots. But here's the good news. The good news if you're drafting Tom Brady is that he gets the Steelers week 1. That's first off. So you're going to get him right out of the gate. You're going to get a ticked off Tom Brady against a bad Steelers defense. And the Steelers offense can put up some points. So I do believe this is going to be a good game, like for an over-under. I think it's going to be a high one in Vegas. So you're going to imagine that there's going to be a lot of fantasy points coming out of it. So it's going to get you out of the gate pretty well. But yeah, I'm with you. Don't go nuts and draft Tom Brady as a top 5 quarterback. Honestly, I'd take Tony Romo over him. I don't know what your take is on that. I'm a huge Tony Romo fan this year. I actually recently moved him up to number 6, I want to say. I moved Roethlisberger down to 7 with the loss of Pouncey. But yes, Tom Brady, it don't overreact too much, but at the same time, the Patriots are known for racking up points in the scoreboard, especially when Belichick and Brady might be upset. So he's a solid QB1. Just don't go overboard with it.
Yeah, I think that's the exact take right there. And I mean, there's so many guys that are going pretty late. I mean, we talked a little bit about someone like Phillip Rivers, who was a top 5 quarterback for the first half of the year last year. I mean, he's going a QB 15 or something like that. So yeah, you don't have to stretch yourself there. But of course, if he's sitting there at a good price, go ahead and draft it well now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now that's the thing is that's going to force the Tannehills to slide down the board a little bit more, the Matthew Staffords to slide down, the Phillip Rivers. Quarterback is so deep, whereas if I don't get the Aaron Rodgers or the Andrew Lucks, I'm waiting on quarterback. I can grab one of those guys later on and be perfectly fine with it. But that's pretty much going to wrap that up. That was the first topic. It was just like, wow, this came on right before we went out live, and we were like, let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about it right when we go live. So we wanted to cover that. I do want to remind everyone that Pro Football Focus, the Fantasy Slant, is brought to you by DraftKings.com. We're going to support them this year. I'm going to get into that. We're going to talk about the Millionaire Maker, some DFS, things like that. However, what I want to talk about now is we touched on it in the last podcast together, but Davante Adams. Now, we talked about the loss of Jordy Nelson. There was a whole bunch of things going on there. I've mentioned to everyone that I am more than okay with taking Davante Adams as a wide receiver too. And I got into this little debate where it was, why is Davante Adams looked at different than Marcus Wheaton? And I didn't think it was a fair conversation just because of the production that we've seen in the past. Because I pulled some numbers. I wanted to go through it and explain to you kind of why I like Davante Adams as much as I do. And maybe you'll have a rebuttal to that. But I wanted to just let everybody out there know why I like Davante Adams, why I believe talent, while it plays some part, it's not the biggest part when it comes to this. So going back to 2011, I'm going to walk you through Aaron Rodgers' top 2 or top 3 receivers each year where they finished. In 2011, Jordy Nelson, wide receiver 2, Greg Jennings, number 18, as well as James Jones finishing as top 40. 2012, James Jones, number 16, Randall Cobb, number 19, Jordy Nelson, number 28. So that was the year that Jordy kind of was nicked up and he missed a few games. So in those 2 years, he had 6 receivers in the top 40. 2013 is the year Rodgers got hurt. Nelson finished top 11. James Jones was still top 40, even though Rodgers did get hurt, missed almost half the season. And then last year, you have Jordy as number 3 and Cobb as number 6. So Aaron Rodgers makes top 20 receivers. Now, Randall Cobb is not that end zone presence. And you could sit here and talk about how James Jones isn't talented and how he's been passed around the league ever since he's left Green Bay. I think there's a reason for that. I think Aaron Rodgers, the ball placement that he doesn't rely so much on his receivers to bail him out. He bails his receivers out, expects them to catch the ball. Now, I do know that Davante Adams was a little bit inefficient last year in the snaps that he did get, but in the games where he saw more than, I think it was 6 targets, he was wildly efficient. So I want to know your take, Kevin. I'm sure you've dove into the numbers as well. I want to know how you feel about Davante Adams. If you think I'm justified saying that he is a top 18 receiver, like bona fide, I believe he has top 10 upside.
Yeah, if you look at ADP recently, it jumps around a little bit, but he's probably going in that 17 to 20 range, sometimes a little bit earlier. As you mentioned, if you go back a number of years, the wide receiver 2 in that offense has always been on, at least on a per game basis, somewhere in the, let's say, 10 to 25 range. So he's placed kind of in the bottom half of that. There are a couple different ways you can look at it. I mean, he's not established like wide receiver 2s have been in the past there. But he does have a pretty strong profile from coming out of college. And you could argue that the gap between Davante Adams and the next couple of guys that are going to be out there running routes, and including the fact that they don't really have a legitimate tight end. They had Jermichael Finley before. Maybe Richard Rodgers will step up this year, but he's another question mark. So you have almost extreme question marks at the wide receiver 3 position and the tight end position. So he could be, a very strong wide receiver 2. As far as where to take him, I'll just look at the other names on the board at that point and decide whether you like him or not. I mean, I haven't necessarily gotten a lot of them just because he'll come up and someone else will come up, like maybe an Amari Cooper or someone like that. And I think it's a coin flip at this point on guys like that. But I could definitely see drafting him. As far as comparison to Wheaton, I mean, there's so many question marks with Wheaton. And Ben Roethlisberger is not a guy who normally is going to support 2 wide receivers like that. Number one. Number two, Wheaton's going to have a few weeks in the spotlight before Bryant comes back, and who knows what will happen there. So, I mean, obviously they're not really on the same plane. But Davante Adams is kind of a risk-reward pick at this point because he's not an established guy, but Aaron Rodgers isn't going to, put up a QB 20 season. He's going to put up a top 5 quarterback season. So someone's going to get those touchdowns. Someone's going to get those receptions. And Davante Adams is a very logical choice.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing is, like Ben Roethlisberger, you said it. He has never had a season where since I think it was 2010, I went back to, he's never had a season where he supported 2 top 24 receivers. So keep that in mind when you're drafting Marcus Wheaton. Keep that in mind when you're drafting, Martavis Bryant. I like Bryant still a few ticks more than I do like Wheaton, just because Wheaton had his shot at the beginning of the year last year. So Bryant was out for, was it 4 or 6 games that he was out?
Yeah, I just think he wasn't even ready. Like, he basically wasn't. They weren't playing him because he was a raw rookie at that point. Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing is, so I'm not crazy about Wheaton. I know some people are jumping up saying he could be a wide receiver 2, wide receiver. I don't really buy that right now. I think that him and Bryant might cancel each other out towards the end in the final stats category. But Bryant, when he plays on a per week basis, is going to be a much higher upside play that I would 100% rather take over Wheaton right now. Now, and I actually just looked at the ADP. There's guys like Jeremy Maclin that have moved up that are being taken in the same areas, Davante Adams, Golden Tates, players like that. And those are players, like I said, it's a coin toss at that point, but I'll take the upside of Adams. Now, the next topic that I do want to discuss is Fred Jackson. He was cut by the Buffalo Bills. We know that the Bills situation, they have injuries in the backfield. And I kind of felt better about LaShawn McCoy after they announced that he was cut. Why? Obvious reasons. They feel like they wouldn't need somebody for the first week. Carlos Williams, he's hurt. So is McCoy, but there's so many question marks around it. But the question that I had for you was that Fred Jackson has been rumored to go to Seattle. He went and visited with him. He hasn't signed yet. Marshawn Lynch is, welcoming the signing. Everybody's saying that Fred Jackson's still going to be fantasy relevant where he goes. Are you on board with that? How are you feeling about this whole thing to Seattle?
I wouldn't jump to get him. I mean, obviously he's 34 years old. He's going to turn 35 at the beginning of next year. He's a guy who's done a lot of work, at least recently, been valuable in PPR formats and in the passing game. So Seattle, they don't throw the ball a lot to the running backs. So I don't necessarily see that changing. Marshawn Lynch is a workhorse. Turbin has been a decent fill-in. They still have Michael. Maybe he'll end up getting cut. I guess we don't know what's going to end up happening there. They acquired Rawls in the draft. So, they got a pretty deep roster there. You pretty much would need a Lynch injury. And then at that point, you'd have to assume someone who is, like I said, 34, 35 years old is going to carry the load. And there's just not going to be the passing opportunity there that there is before. But as you mentioned, in terms of Buffalo, maybe speak on that really quickly, I do think that it helps with McCoy outlook. And Carlos Williams, he's a guy that I really liked coming into this year just because he costs essentially nothing, and he's 230 pounds, and he runs like a 4.5. And he's back at practice. I mean, not really practicing fully, but he's back. So I think that also lends to the notion that he might be ready for week 1 also in Buffalo. Or else they're just, they don't know what they're doing in Buffalo, which is not out of the question.
Yeah. No, Dixon's been getting some reps there. Rex Ryan came out, and I've had a lot of people ask me, Mike, who are you picking up if you have McCoy? Who are you handcuffing him with? I think Carlos Williams probably is that guy, although he's, I think, 3rd on the depth chart right now, behind Dixon. So, and then there's Bryce Brown in the mix as well, who they traded for. It's just a mess. I say that if McCoy's not the starter there, it's probably a situation I'm going to avoid. Williams, you're going to see him climb up a little bit up draft boards because of the hype on Twitter and like all the experts bringing up that guy. But Fred Jackson is, and most people don't realize, he's averaged 3.8 yards per carry or less in 2 of the last 3 years. Seattle's offensive line has taken major hits this offseason. In the preseason, they've looked awful. They've looked really bad. Fortunate enough for them is they have Russell Wilson, who's one of the most mobile quarterbacks in the league. But Fred Jackson at this point, he's a very just complimentary back. I think there's a reason, like it says something when Buffalo, a team that respects him, that had him for so long, when they release him, it's saying something. It wasn't a big money drop. I mean, they dropped I think it was like $2 million they saved it from him, but that's nothing major when you're talking about a guy that you feel that can contribute to a team that wants to run the ball 40 to 50 times a game. So I don't know. I'm staying away from Fred Jackson. And if he goes to Seattle, I believe that I heard something weird there. If he does go to Seattle, I just think it's more going to eat away at Marshawn Lynch's receiving totals, which he's had over 300 yards the last 2 seasons. So that was kind of a shock to me when I went and looked at it. But I think it's more of a hit to his receiving numbers than anything. But Fred Jackson's someone I'm avoiding. The next topic that I want to talk about is the Cowboys backfield. Just when we thought that Joseph Randall would be the workhorse, they were talking him up. Darren Mcfadden is back on the field, and I got to say, I watched the tape. He looks good. I've never been a Darren McFadden hater. I've said that injuries have taken their toll on him. They can do that to a running back, and especially when it's something with your foot, like the Liz Frank injury he had. But I'm glad to see him back on the field. I'm not happy that we don't have another backfield that has no clarity to it. What is your take on the whole Darren McFadden, Joseph Randall battle right now?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting what's happened with ADP because Darren McFadden seems to fall squarely in the dead to me category when it comes to drafters because even what's happened, I mean, they've talked about committee over and over and over again, yet Randall hasn't really fallen that far. I mean, you could say you were drafting him at a severe discount anyway, but it's not that big of a discount. I mean, he's going in, let's say, the fourth round or maybe even third round of some standard drafts. And I haven't really even seen the ADPs move around that much over the last week where you had McFadden with a fairly impressive performance. And I think even more importantly, Jerry Jones just loves Darren McFadden. He wanted to draft him coming out. It didn't happen. And he actually has a quote in the paper the other day where he said, this was vintage McFadden. You see the acceleration. And McFadden's interesting because he's someone who I wrote a piece about last year, liking him over MJD. Now that was a good call. He was better than MJD, but he was still pretty worthless last year. So if you look at him, though, I don't think he necessarily doesn't have the acceleration or wasn't playing well. He just has a certain style of running, which is basically run as quickly as possible straight into the line. And it wasn't very effective in Oakland if there weren't any holes there. You really needed to have some patience. Maybe with Tony Romo at quarterback and with that Dallas offensive line, where you really saw him being effective, you saw them sweeping him out on the outside, and he still looked extremely fast going around on the outside, and he could catch the ball too. So I think he's a decent play. I actually drafted him for the first time just a couple days ago, just because why not? I mean, if you're taking him in the 9th, 10th round, something like that, it's not as if you're investing a whole lot in the guy. So I would take him over Randall, but I wouldn't necessarily bank on him coming up this year. He probably has a pretty high bust probability, but that's going to be true of almost anyone you're taking in the double-digit rounds.
Wow, you just said you'd take him over Randall? I just want to confirm that.
No. I would. I would take him at his ADP.
Okay.
I just wouldn't touch Joseph Randall. I mean, it's possible that everything could fall into place for the guy, but he's not. He's not a great prospect. He's not very fast. He's not very big. He's got some issues with the law also. Supposedly he made another court appearance the other day. He's got some stuff going on. He definitely if anyone wants to Google that story about what happened to him, I don't want to get into. It's probably not family friendly talking about some of the stuff there, but yeah. So I'm for drafting McFadden at his ADP over Randall, but I wouldn't necessarily expect either one to come through for you. It's really just playing the odds.
Right. I just wanted to clarify that because I was just I was lost there. I was like, really? Wow, that's a big one. Now, Randall, you're right. Randall's sitting around at the ADP of 20, middle of the 4th round right now. So he's dropped a little bit. McFadden's creeping up though. He's now taken as the 36th running back off the board, but he's right in that Tevin Coleman, Trey Mason, Isaiah Crowell, Shane Vereen territory. I'm taking him over those guys. I'm also taking him over the guy that's the 33rd running back on the board, Alfred Blue. I'm taking Darren McFadden over him. If you've seen McFadden behind this line, he's making it work. And, it's kind of like Kevin said there. McFadden, if he sees a hole, he'll hit it. But the thing is, in Oakland, he didn't have very many holes to hit. And I'm not going to say that he was the most efficient running back, but playing behind this offensive line, we are looking for upside. And if for some reason Joseph Randall, again, if he does get in illegal trouble, or if Jerry Jones loves Darren McFadden enough to say we want to give him the majority of carries while he's healthy, that's a fantasy RB2 in my mind. So while you may not have him for the whole year because we know McFadden by now, we know that we can't bet on him to stay healthy, but why not take a chance on a guy in the 8th round? In that territory, you're taking chances anyway, so why not take a guy with the upside playing behind that offensive line in an explosive offense? So the next topic I wanted to discuss was Devante Parker has returned to practice in Miami, and that's going to lead me to talk about Miami's offense as a whole. Now, it's kind of like the Matthew Stafford effect. So the way I feel about Ryan Tannehill, Devante Parker, when you have so many skill position guys that we talk about, Jarvis Landry, we talk about him, we talk about Parker, we talk about Lamar Miller, we talk about Jordan Cameron, Kenny Stills. There are so many players in Miami that people are trying to hype up. Nobody can get a firm grasp on who's who and what's what. Take the guy that's going to be throwing to all of them, and that's Ryan Tannehill, who has improved every single year in the league. Now, most people don't know that Ryan Tannehill, was it 4 years ago or 5 years ago that he became a quarterback for the first time, Kevin?
Yeah, it was right in there. I mean, it was while he was in college.
Yeah, so basically he was still learning the position, and the reason I like Ryan Tannehill so much is he continues to progress in every major category. I understand his yards per attempt he hasn't gotten over 7 yet, but I also believe that it's taken time for him to learn that offense, and he's going to be in it. This will be the 3rd year that he's starting full time in that offense. So I'm excited to see how he takes that step forward. Devante Parker, like I said, return to practice. He could be that red zone threat along with Jordan Cameron. How are you feeling about Devante Parker? How are you feeling about Ryan Tannehill?
I think Parker's a good bet. I mean, one of the things that I heard recently that makes me a little bit more positive on Parker is the fact that Kenny Stills may be on the outs there. There's talk of starting Rashard Matthews in front of him. So, I mean, my question with Parker going into the season was, well, how much is there going to be left for him when you have Jordan Cameron, when you have Landry, who just seems to be a target magnet over the top? I mean, over the front, you have Stills in there. You have maybe Lamar Miller out of the backfield and so on. So I think Parker's a good bet because he definitely could jump up to be the number 1 wide receiver in that offense. I know Landry has done really well there, but he's not exactly a special receiver. So who knows? Devante Parker had a really great half of a year that he had last year, but he's had some injury issues. So I'd be comfortable taking him where he's going right now, just not expecting to start him necessarily the first few weeks. He's someone who could emerge later. As far as Ryan Tannehill is concerned, I mean, I still have a problem to this day divorcing reality quarterback from fantasy quarterback. So Ryan Tannehill is one of those names where, I mean, the other day he went ahead of Drew Brees and Peyton Manning in a draft that I had. And, it's not a horrible pick from a fantasy perspective, but it hurts me to see that happen from a reality quarterback perspective. But in that system, he has a lot of things going for him. It's kind of like Sam Bradford this year, right? Because they're in a similar system. They imported kind of the Philadelphia type of system to, I mean, not as extreme, but that type of system to Miami, where it's picking up the pace, a lot of short reads, a lot of quick reads, a lot of getting the ball out of your hand quickly. And Tannehill is doing well in it, so he's able to rack up some stats. So I think he's a good pick, but he's not necessarily someone who's going late. And I think last year was great because you were able to get him much later. Whereas this year, he's going in the same range as, your Tom Brady's of the world, your Tony Romo's of the world, maybe a little bit after Tony Romo. And like I mentioned before, there's a lot of guys going later. So I wouldn't stretch to get him, but he's definitely a guy you hope you get a little bit of a discount for the fact that he's not that great of a reality quarterback, although some people like him as a reality quarterback also.
No, I think he's getting better in that regard, and he also rushes too. Like he had over 300 yards last year on the ground, even his first 2 seasons, over 215 yards. So I like Tannehill. I do like him a lot. I think he could take that step forward into that top 8 territory. Now he's not being drafted as such, which is nice. That's why I believe there's some built-in equity there. But Devante Parker, someone that yes, I'm taking later in drafts. He could turn out to be that Alshon Jeffery of a couple of years ago, where everybody wanted to talk about Brandon Marshall, whereas everybody's talking about Landry. I believe that Parker could turn into that Alshon Jeffery type receiver, and it would not shock me if he can get back into the lineup and play, 14 games to see a stat line of around 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. It wouldn't surprise me at all in that offense. I just think that there's room for him. I think there's plenty of other options where it's going to take some attention away from him. I do like him. I do like Tannehill. Great offense. Should put up some points. Their defense as well, too. I do want to stop and take this time to let you guys know, let's start out the season right. Let's start it by winning $2 million in week 1 at DraftKings.com, America's favorite one-week fantasy football site. What you could do there, if you've not played DFS before, there is no season-long commitments. You go in, you pick a new lineup every single week. In week 1, they are having the biggest fantasy football contest ever. There is $10 million in prizes at stake. $2 million for first, $1 million for second. So while some people say that first place, we're coming in second place, you're the first to lose. If I'm the first to lose $1 million, I'm a happy camper. We are wrapping up. There's unfortunately not going to be really any more preseason games for us to practice on. However, get in there, put in the code PFF. Hurry to DraftKings.com right now. Use that promo code PFF to play for free at a shot at that $1 million. For second place, $2 million for first place in the Week 1 Millionaire Maker. Again, enter PFF for free entry now at DraftKings.com. The next situation I want to touch on is a player that I literally just mentioned when I was talking about Devante Parker, Alshon Jeffery. Alshon Jeffery has not seen the practice field since August 11th. And if we've known anything about John Fox now that he's been in Chicago, we know that he is not telling us anything about these injuries. When a player misses a week and a half or so, I'm okay with it because I believe they might be trying to keep him healthy. Like Dez Bryant being held out of so many Cowboys games, they want to make sure he's healthy because without Dez Bryant, they are nothing. Now, if Alshon Jeffery had been practicing, not playing in games, I'd feel better about it. He has not seen the practice field since August 11th. I'm getting nervous about him. What's your take, Kevin?
You know, I'm getting nervous too. He's someone coming into this year that I absolutely loved. He was probably my favorite pick in the wide receiver group in the first couple of rounds, just because if you look at him, I mean, maybe we'll just step back for a second, kind of make the case for him, and then discuss the injury. So if you look at him, he has been basically a top 10 wide receiver in his second and third years in the leagues, while Brandon Marshall was on the same team. Now you could say, oh, it was Tressman, or if you want to say that, but it's not as if there was this amazing of stats that Cutler was putting up the last couple of years. He's just a guy that gathers a lot of targets and plays well. Now he's going to be elevated into that number one role, and the guys around him aren't necessarily that great. So I loved him as a pick. Now, as far as the injury concerns, I believe that it's something that you have to monitor. There are a few things that make me a little bit more positive. I mean, number one, we're talking about a calf injury. I'm not sure that can really turn into something like we saw with Kevin White, where you need season-ending surgery or something like that. It just might be taking longer to heal than you would hope for. Number two, they haven't signed anybody, really. So we talked about, in New England, how they signed Reggie Wayne. You've seen other teams try to add some depth with injuries. They haven't added anyone. So if they haven't added anyone, that means they're willing to go Eddie Royal, Marquise Wilson, and I don't even know who else they have there, quite honestly, out there. So that's pretty bold. That'd be pretty bold if they're willing to do that. So I think it's good. And the third thing, now this is, maybe a stretch, but there was, if you want to dig into people's exactly what they're doing at all times, social media is helping us out here. There's an Instagram post on Alshon Jeffery's account where he has a picture and the heading is ready for the season, or ready for 16 games, ready to go, or something like that. Maybe his social media people just completely messed that up and he's not even in charge of it, but hopefully that's a positive sign for what's going on. So I know the Kevin White situation was troubling, what was going on there, but I think the calf injury is a bit different than someone who has, let's say, a fracture, even if it's a minor fracture in their shin or something like that, is obviously a lot more difficult situation.
No, I can see where you're coming from there, and yeah, you're right. The calf, what can really be going on with a calf? I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I'm just saying it really can't be good when he's walking into a new offense to be missing almost a month. And I understand all the things, and I understand that he's going to be the Demaryius Thomas of the Adam Gase offense, and I understand all these things, but Alshon Jeffery is he's a guy that's going to be relied upon a ton. He's going to be a target monster. I wouldn't doubt it if he saw 150 targets if he played all 16 games. It wouldn't doubt me at all. But what's going to be the quality of those targets? Jay Cutler is losing confidence as the weeks pass. I'm from Chicago. I get to see every single Bears game, and he looks like that scared guy in the pocket again. And that's never a good thing for a quarterback. He's taken abuse. He has no receivers to throw to. And after Marquise Wilson, it's Josh Bellamy. So that tells you about the Bears' depth at wide receiver. And then we got Mark Mariani or something like that.
I've never heard of either one of those guys.
Exactly. That's
Bill Bellamy, I remember from years back.
And that's where you could put in a solitude to say, yeah, I understand. So I think that Alshon Jeffery is going to be there for week one. It still concerns me that he hasn't been conditioning, that he hasn't been taking part in this new offense. That's my concern with Alshon Jeffery. He's not dropping down to say I'm not drafting him. I don't think I could take him in the top 10 receivers anymore. I just don't see myself doing that. I want a guy that I know is healthy, that that I can rely on. Not to say he's a bad pick. For me personally, I'm probably going to end up staying away from him is all. Now, moving on, I want to talk about the Denver Broncos running back situation. I hear mumblings about people are worried about C.J. Anderson's workload, and now that they're afraid that Ronnie Hillman's going to eat into it. I'm not one of those guys to do that. As a matter of fact, I am loving the fact that Ronnie Hillman stole that number 2 job from Monty Ball. And I'll say why. Because people still think that Ball has the pedigree, that he was a high draft pick, that they felt like, he's the handcuff to have. I never believed that. I think Ronnie Hillman was a lot better than him in that short span last year. So I went back and I was looking through Ronnie Hillman's numbers in the time that he took over when, Monty Ball went down before C.J. Anderson got his shot. And Ronnie Hillman did very well. He played against Arizona. He played against the Jets. Those were his first 2 games. And in those 2 games, he piled up 180 yards. Next 2 games, San Francisco, San Diego, over 100 yards in both those games, 2 total touchdowns. So Ronnie Hillman, I love him. Now, do I think he's going to steal carries from C.J. Anderson? No. I think he's going to start out as that, 5 to 7 touch guy behind C.J. Anderson. And if for some reason something did happen to Anderson, Hillman's going to jump into that role. And I'm comfortable with that because I can get Ronnie Hillman dirt cheap. I believe that Monty Ball is going to be traded at some point. I think that they're going to try and get anything they can. Supposedly, they've already put the feelers out there. But Ronnie Hillman is someone that I would, if you're drafting C.J. Anderson, like I'm telling you to, in the first round, I would take him. I'm not lying when I say it. I would take him number 2 overall, number 3 the latest. I'm handcuffing him with Ronnie Hillman just because the upside that Hillman offers once he were to enter that offense. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think Hillman's an interesting guy because he was very effective, as you mentioned, last year. He had some pretty big numbers coming out of college, but yet he doesn't necessarily profile as a workhorse. He's a smaller back, much smaller than C.J. Anderson, at least. I mean, I think the concerns with C.J. Anderson and what you saw happen with Monty Ball the last couple of years, basically Ball isn't good. I mean, you could say that he had a good pedigree, but he's someone who just hasn't performed well, and basically everyone else that they've stuck in there has performed well. So I wouldn't be concerned about Hillman taking away more carries from C.J. Anderson. He definitely fits the mold of someone who can do everything. He can catch the ball. He's a bigger back. He can do all that. Hillman's probably a great complementary piece. So I think Hillman should clearly be the number 2 there. But I don't really think it's a 1A, 1B type of situation. I think C.J. Anderson is clearly the starter and the workhorse there.
Yes. I'm with you 100% on that one. Now, moving on to the next topic that I want to talk about, we're running low on time here, but I do want to touch on this one. RG3 was benched in Washington. They could say what they want. Gruden was looking for an opportunity to start Cousins. We all know that was happening. The Redskins offensive line, they obviously aren't interested in blocking right now for RG3. So Kirk Cousins is stepping in. They've named him the week 1 starter. They've named him the starter going forward. So basically, Robert Griffin now needs a injury to be put in that starting lineup, which is a domino effect. It's kind of like it's that effect for me because Alfred Morris is someone that I was hinging on the fact that RG3 was starting. If you have not seen the split numbers of Alfred Morris with RG3 and without RG3, they're very, very discerning. I've actually bumped Morris out of my top 20 running backs. It doesn't feel good to do because Alfred Morris, I believe, is more talented than that. But I'm putting him into that Carlos Hyde type territory where he's playing behind a not so good offensive line, one that was supposed to be good because they drafted a couple guys to go there, but he's playing on a bad team. He can't catch passes, and now RG3's gone. The numbers of him over his career, he averages it's almost a full yard per carry more when RG3 is starting, and his touchdowns, I don't even want to get started on it. Alfred Morris is just not very good when RG3 has not been in the game. Have you noticed the same trend? Is there some type of optimism that you could give me? Because I drafted Alfred Morris as my RB1 in this league. I went wide receiver heavy. I got him as my RB1 thinking he could provide some value there. Please talk me off the ledge in regards to Alfred Morris.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Alfred Morris, but I do think there's always optimism in when you're looking at all those different splits. It's really difficult to tell, did RG3 cause that to happen, or is it just the fact that Washington has been so awful the last few years, and the last time they actually won games was 3 years ago, and it just happened. RG3 was the quarterback when they won games because Alfred Morris is not catching passes. So he's going to be valuable running the ball, and he's going to be valuable scoring touchdowns. And when you're winning both of those two things, happen much more often. So the only optimism you can build from this situation is maybe Cousins will actually produce more wins than RG3 was going to produce for the team. Maybe they could put them in a better situation there. This is a team that's only won, like 5 games the last 2 years combined. So the fact that Alfred Morris has even been decent during that time period is pretty amazing. If you think about any other running back who doesn't catch passes, who has been productive when a team's averaging 2.5 wins a season, it doesn't happen. So he's an extremely effective runner. The upside here is that they end up having a real NFL franchise this year, and they surprised at the upside in their performance. If that happens, then you can see those touchdowns and those yardage totals jump up. And I don't think it's necessarily tied to RG3. I think it's tied to winning games.
And that's the thing, is I understand where you're saying that, because obviously the last time they were halfway decent was RG3's rookie year. And that's when that's where he ran for 4.8 yards per carry. That's where he was that back where we felt like he was going to be a top 10 running back for a long time. Now, this even goes back to last year when RG3 was considered not very good at football. I'm gonna give you the numbers here. He ran for 664 yards on 143 carries, which was 4.65 yards per carry with 6 touchdowns. That's in 8 games with RG3 last year. All right, so 4.65, 6 touchdowns in half the season. The other half of the season, 3.36 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. That's where I'm hanging my hat on, because this Redskins team, it's not like they've transformed. I understand their run defense is legit. They stop the run very well. Their secondary is still awful. Their secondary is going to give up a lot of points. But you have to, I guess that's where you have to hang your hat and hope that the Redskins defense gets better, where he gets those carries. I'm just seeing him trending downhill, and he's a guy that I've just turned out. I'm starting to avoid in fantasy drafts altogether. So
yeah, no, I've probably been avoiding him from day one. I was just trying to think of a positive scenario there. And that would be the positive scenario. I mean, I do think he's talented. I think it's just a poor situation. And when you're looking for someone to draft that early, he's a tough guy to pick if you just don't know what's going to happen and he doesn't catch any passes. So I would avoid him in drafts right now. But if you've drafted him before, there is a road to production, but it's a pretty narrow road.
Right, and we didn't even mention Matt Jones.
Yeah. They seem to like Matt Jones. It's always troubling when you have a new regime, you could say, come in and they draft somebody, because it's really the coaches and the GM decide who's going to play at running back. It's not like wide receivers where you line a couple of them up and their production speaks on the field. For running back, you can kind of just get phased out if they decide they want to go Matt Jones this year. Gotcha.
And now before we wrap up, I want to touch on one thing because we have some people doing their last drafts. It's coming up this final weekend before the NFL season. Monday's Labor Day. That's a big draft day. I know I have 3 drafts leading up to Monday, and then another one on Monday. So I want to know, Kevin, who is one player anywhere, doesn't matter ADP, who is one player that you want on every single one of your fantasy teams?
There are quite a few different guys that I want on all of my fantasy teams, honestly. But it's going to have to be, so it can't be someone who's going too early, just because you're not going to be able to get them on all of your different fantasy teams. So I would say from a running back position, I really like Kyrie Robinson is somebody that you can pick up late. I think there's a chance that he's actually just better than Mark Ingram. I don't think he's necessarily going to replace Mark Ingram without an injury, but you already see that Spiller's likely going to miss the first couple of games of the season. That's the new news that's coming out there. So Robinson will get his chance there. Ingram's had his injury histories. I think he's a very productive guy, and you're going to get a couple of starts out of him right off the bat. So I think he's a great guy to pick up and to put in the lineup. A couple of the guys that I just think are extremely undervalued. One of them is Kendall Wright. Nobody really likes him, but as far as that Titans offense, there's really not much else to throw it to right now. So I think he's a extremely low risk option where we're gonna be able to pick him up and plug him into the lineup. So he's another guy that I like quite a bit this year. And lastly is Tyler Eifert. As far as the different tight ends this year, if you're looking at guys that could be elite options, obviously you have Gronk going in the first. You have Olsen and Kelsey that are maybe going in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, something like that. And then you could get Eifert in the 10th round. And I don't know if I really see a huge difference between someone like Kelsey and Eifert. I realize Kelsey had some production last year and then Eifert hasn't. But I think Eifert looks like he's going to be the number 2 option in that in that passing scheme. And he was a very high draft pick. He has all of the athletic measurables, and I think he's probably the last guy at the tight end position you can draft where you could have a good shot of getting in that top 3. So he's someone that I would target once you get to those mid rounds.
Very good, very good. Now, a few of my guys that I've noticed that now, one being, I know it's an early one, but Lamar Miller. I'm finding myself reaching for him in the second round now, like reaching early. Like, so if I have my first round pick, I lock up one of my stud receivers or whatever. Loving Lamar Miller in that second round. I know some people are standoffish. I believe I actually moved him up in my rankings to I think number 8 running back, number 9, right in there. I'm finding him on more and more of my fantasy teams because I'm willing to draft him early in the second round. But like you said, that's not something that you always have the opportunity to do. So if we're going to talk about later rounds, I'm going to talk about someone. I did a sleeper article for PFF, which was Stevie Johnson. Stevie Johnson is right next to Kendall Wright and ADP. So those are 2 guys. I'm on board with you on Kendall Wright. I believe he's deeper down there. I just don't think he offers maybe the upside that Stevie Johnson does. Stevie Johnson's going to walk onto a team where Malcolm Floyd he's old. It's his last year playing. Antonio Gates is out the first 4 weeks, and then Keenan Allen was a disappointment last year. He's going to be playing the slot, apparently. They're not going to move him. I mean, they're not going to change his role too much. We're just hoping that he takes a step forward. But I think there's plenty of room for Stevie Johnson in that offense to be a wide receiver 3 on your fantasy team every single week. I do believe that. We're going to see how it plays out. Another guy later in drafts that you can grab is Brandon Coleman. He's dirt cheap. He's been playing over Marcus Colston all preseason. They cut Nick Toon. The writing is on the wall for this guy to replace Marcus Colston. And if you don't know, at training camp, Kevin, I don't know if you heard this story. At training camp, Brandon Cole resembles Marcus Colston so much. He went out there and put on a Colston jersey and put on a helmet and went and started signing autographs for fans. Later on, he ended up apologizing for it, but it just goes to show that he is that physical size that Marcus Colston is. And it's only so long that somebody like Marcus Colston with the knees he has to produce. So I think Brandon Coleman is an excellent late round flyer. He's someone that I'm going to have a lot of my fantasy teams. And then at the running back position, Kyrie Robinson is a great one. He's a great one to lock up. You've already went into the reasons with him. Mark Ingram is also not known as the most durable running back as well. But yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about the guys that I want on my fantasy teams. Kevin, do you have any last thoughts? Because next week we're going to be back here on Thursday for you guys covering week 1 of the NFL season because we are there. The first game is going to be taking place with Tom Brady on the field. Anything you want to touch base on before we get out of here?
No, not really. Just really excited for the season. I hope everyone has fun drafting this year, and I think it's just going to be a great year. I haven't been excited about a football season as much as I've been about this year. I mean, there are some question marks. There have been a couple of injuries, but I think for the most part, there's going to be some really some strong weeks this week and hopefully some exciting weeks.
Absolutely. I can't wait. We are 1 week away. Guys, feel free to go and sign up for Pro Football Focus's Fantasy Gold. All right, this is where you go on. We tell you who to start in your lineup. You don't have to worry about that stuff. We do the research for you. It is updated every single day, guys. We have the game projections up for week 1 already. It's also got the DFS stuff for you guys that are looking for that ideal lineup. You can go in there, sign up for Fantasy Gold, $29.99. If we look at that over an entire season, we are talking about basically a quarter a day, guys. A quarter a day. Skip the Starbucks. Get PFF Gold. But we will be back. Make sure to follow myself and Kevin on Twitter. He is at Cole_Kev. I am at Mike Tagliere NFL, as you can see down below here. But until next time, guys, lights out.